When I think of great Tennessee running backs in recent memory, there's really only one that comes to mind that had the amount of hype as Jalen Hurd. Alvin Kamara had the potential, Rajon Neal was a great player, and Torrin Poole was solid, but I think Hurd was not only the best, but a fan favorite because of his story and how he came to Tennessee. Sadly, Jalen got beat up big time while he was at Tennessee, and after disagreements with the coaching staff, he bolted town for another school. He's in the NFL right now, but at one point he was seen as a prodigy in the next great Tennessee running back, so what exactly happened and what happened to his career? Today we're going to talk about all of that and more, but first be sure to give the video a like, subscribe if you love college football, suggest another player I should look at next, and stay until the end. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Jalen Hurd. Jalen Hurd was born and raised the Tennessee way and was a Volunteers fan from the time he was a little kid. His mother ran track and his father played wide receiver at Tennessee State, so naturally Jalen was an athlete. Everyone knew he was a special player from a young age, and he actually started playing football when he was 5 years old. He got accepted into the prestigious private school called Montgomery Bell Academy, and he had found that out in 7th grade and went there. When he would get there, his coach knew he was going to be a special player, as he was one of only 2 freshmen to play varsity at the beginning, and he not only played, but was a factor in the games. After 2 years, his family would move to Hendersonville, Tennessee, and he transferred to Beach High School. As a junior, he ran for 1,606 rushing yards and 23 touchdowns, and even had a 300-yard game with 4 touchdowns, and that showed just how special he was. He also dominated at camps, and by this time, he had blossomed into a 5-star recruit and one of the premier running backs in the country. He broke the Tennessee high school record for career rushing yards, and he was seen as one of the best recruits in the state in years. When it came time to make a college decision, there was only one school on his mind: Tennessee. He said this about his commitment to the Volunteers, quote, "I really wanted to go to UT. Last year they weren't in such a good position for me to go there, but with Coach Butch Jones and the new staff, I think it's the best place for me to go." He was the number 1 player in the state and a huge commitment for Butch, and many thought he could be a superstar running back at the SEC level. Obviously, Tennessee fans knew all about this kid, and he was a local legend and prodigy, so they could not wait for him to get on campus. According to 24/7 Sports, Hurd was a 4-star recruit, the number 4 athlete, and the 39th best player in the class of 2014. He enrolled early and was ready to dominate. He arrived in Knoxville as the premier running back with Rajon Neal graduating, and he was going to be the guy. He caught his first touchdown in their opener against Utah State, and then he had his first career rushing touchdown against Arkansas State the following week. He played well in their primetime loss to Oklahoma, but where he'd have a great game against Georgia with 119 yards, but he did have a costly fumble in that game. He would hit a wall in the middle of the season, as he was a non-factor in his next 3 games, and didn't do a whole lot against Alabama either. He would bounce back though, as in their double overtime thrilling win over South Carolina, he had over 100 yards rushing and caught a touchdown in the receiving game, and Jalen was back. Against Kentucky the next week, he'd go for 118 yards, but he would struggle in their close loss to Missouri, and then went down with an injury early against Vanderbilt. Luckily for him though, Tennessee would get to a 6-6 record and earn a bid to the Tax Slayer Bowl, where he'd go for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in their win over the Iowa Hawkeyes. For the most part, Hurd had a great freshman year, but he was banged up. He finished with 899 yards and 5 touchdowns as a true freshman, and everyone knew he was going to have a huge sophomore year. Going into his sophomore year, he had a lot more competition, as he now had Alvin Kamara from Alabama and 4-star freshman John Kelly in the backfield. He'd have a career day in their Week 1 opener against Bowling Green with over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. There was a ton of hype about this Tennessee football team, and they had a big lead over Oklahoma in the first half, but Baker Mayfield led a thrilling comeback and beat the Vols in overtime. Hurd gave it his best shot in that game as he had over 100 yards and a score, but Tennessee would lose that game in a heartbreaker. Hurd and the Vols would bounce back as he had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns against Florida, but Will Grier threw a late touchdown to Antonio Callaway, and Tennessee lost that game in heartbreaking fashion as well. Hurd would end up running like he was on fire over the team's next 6 games, as he would total 485 yards and 3 touchdowns against Georgia, Alabama, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. Tennessee would end up having a great year, and they were matched up with number 12 Northwestern in the bowl game, and he went for over 130 yards and was named the game's MVP. Hurd had a breakout sophomore year, as he would rush for 1,158 yards and 12 touchdowns, and that was the 12th best season in school history. As a junior, things began to go south a bit despite all the hype around the program, as Jalen was sort of unhappy, he was getting injured a lot, and he wanted to switch positions. He had a great opening game against Appalachian State, and he would end up saving the day as he recovered Josh Dobbs' fumble in the end zone, and also in the Battle of Bristol, he had 100 yards. Fun fact, the battle at Bristol against Virginia Tech was actually the most attended college football game of all time. He'd come up big in their win over Florida, and the Volunteers were on fire at this point in the season. He missed the miraculous Hail Mary game against Georgia with a head injury, and after the South Carolina game, he decided to transfer and leave the program midway through the season. He finished 6th in school history in rushing yards, and people were sad to see him go, but he's making a decision that was best for him, and I know it was hard for him to make. He decided to make that gutsy call and not only transfer to Baylor, but change to the wide receiver position. While he was in Matt Rule's system at Baylor, he was the go-to wide receiver and even ran the ball on some occasions, and at 6'4", he made a decision that would help the longevity of his career and help him stay on the field more. There were 3 games he played exceptionally well in, as he had over 100 yards against UTSA, 104 yards against Oklahoma, and 135 yards against Kansas State. Baylor wasn't amazing by any means, but they weren't terrible, as they would go 7-6, and Hurd had a pretty good season there. He finished with 69 catches for 946 yards and 4 touchdowns, while he also added 48 carries on the ground for 209 yards and 3 scores there. He could have done even better and been a 1,000-yard receiver if he did not injure his knee in their season finale game, but we will never know. He was named the Big 12 Newcomer of the Year and was ready for the NFL Draft. He was seen as a multi-threat weapon and was projected as a Day 2 NFL Draft pick. He ended up getting taken with the 67th overall pick in the 3rd round by the 49ers, and he was seen as a potential big-time weapon as they needed a guy to step up there. He ended up getting injured though and would miss the entire 2019 NFL season. There was some hype going into 2020, but they had just drafted Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State in the 1st round, so maybe the organization didn't have a lot of faith in him. In training camp, he would end up tearing his ACL, and he missed the entire 2020 season as well, and he has yet to play a single snap in the NFL, and I honestly don't know if he ever will. So what happened to Jalen Hurd, the guy who was supposed to be the next great thing? Well, the answer is pretty short and simple. He was never able to stay healthy, and that can be blamed to the fact that he was a workhorse back his entire career, and at 6'4", he took an absolute beating every time he played a snap in high school and at Tennessee, and his body has just failed him. He definitely has all the tools, the mindset, and the skills to be successful. We'll have to see how much longer he stays with the game, and if his body can continue to do it, and if it just decides to give out on him, or he decides to call it quits on football altogether. What do you guys think though? I'm fascinated to hear what you guys think if you're a Tennessee fan. Let me know what happened to Jalen Hurd while he was at Tennessee, and why you think he ended up leaving. Let me know another player I should take a look at like Hurd next, and also be sure to check out all my other videos about Tennessee related topics, like my video on Jeremy Pruitt and Josh Dobbs. And before you go, don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace